How are you all? Yes, we're live. Okay. So let me just, while we're kind of getting ready, before I introduce you guys, I just want to bring up I have to go live on Instagram because Instagram kind of has its own. You kind of go live regularly with the
Each
other
time.
platforms, but Instagram you have to push an extra button. And we are live on Instagram too. Oh, you guys can't see Instagram, but it's really cool. Like the vertical that you see here with the three of that's Instagram right now, and it looks cool. Hey, that
Oh, that's
dude,
cool.
how are you? Let me pull up the live on Substack.
TikTok?
Let me just pull up the live feed on Substack, and let me put out the live feed on Facebook so we can see if anybody has any questions, and then we will. Hang on, let me turn that off. Oh, there we go. And bear with us, guys. We're just kind of getting set up here. This is if you're just joining us for the first time on any of the socials, this is our, every other week we do a political wellness live. If those of you, I know most of you who come to, who subscribe on Substack and join from the other socials, I know we come for the rage, we come for the news, you come to hear me complain and insult Donald Trump and talk about, how, my glass half full perspective on the, oh, hang on, let me just mute Facebook. My, my relatively negative, occasionally positive perspective on the world. But remember, the name of the community on Substack. If you don't follow us on Substack, go to zenocracy.news and follow us there, Zenocracy. The name of our community, though, is Zenocracy. That's Zen plus democracy. And I'm really good at the saving democracy part, so the ocracy I've got. But the Zen part, I've failed you all for months and months and months, just terribly. Because I get on here and I insult Donald Trump as our 10-year-old Ritu and I says. I like to use the F word. I make fun of him because he's a fantastic person, the smartest person in the world. He's such a genius. I'm so smart. But the Zen part is important, guys. And I did that, when myself and our whole community came up with the idea of Zenocracy, it was so that we, my original intent was to remind everybody that we're going to be okay because Donald Trump is an idiot, and an idiot cannot become a successful dictator. But there was another part to that. And that part is that we're going to be okay because we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay because we're stronger and we're better than the worst of ourselves and we're better than the worst that we can be, all of us, even the people who will act the worst they can be. And in order to kind of supercharge that, my wife Ritu, who eventually I'll figure out how to do lower thirds or captions, but I don't do that. Do that, Ritu? Raise your hands. My wife Ritu and our dear friend Patricia are here. They are mental health professionals, and every other week at 11 on Sunday, Ritu and Patricia are going to help us with a political wellness live. Patricia is a marriage and family therapist. She's been doing the work for decades. Ritu my wife is a social worker for decades as well. And she's also a wellness expert. And she also has her own socials, and we'll introduce those before we go. But between the two of them, you have decades and decades and decades of experience in the mental health world, and they're here to help us help ourselves. So let's just get started. When we were prepping for this yesterday, guys, right? We were talking about the topic of the day yesterday, which was the No Kings protest. And AKA, I think, part and parcel to the No Kings protest also is all the things that we were protesting: the war, the abuses of ICE, Donald Trump's autocratic tendencies, or I wouldn't say tendencies, his autocratic behaviors, the fact that he's getting away with all this stuff. And we've covered a lot of this in previous discussions. But you guys, as much as I want to go to the negative, you guys hyper-focused rightfully on the positive. And yesterday, I felt like the No Kings protest was indicative in a lot of ways of the positive. And we talked about that there was a different sense in the protests yesterday than I felt in the previous protests, and the words hope and empowerment came up when we were speaking yesterday. So before we get into the sort of psychology of it and the wellness of it, um, let me just ask Ritu first, because we were there together. We were at least one protest together. Did you feel a difference
Oh, without a
in
doubt.
yesterday's protest juxtaposed against the last time we went?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. There was so much energy in the protest. And in a little bit, Mitch is going to share pictures from the protest. And what I loved about it is there was a feeling like right now with this political culture, I think a lot of people are feeling very alone. And here was an opportunity to come together. And what I noticed was not only did people feel empowered and they had hope, but there was a collective consciousness of shared values, of shared understanding. And that alone was powerful. And you didn't feel alone. And what was beautiful about it, it was all different generations, from our son who's 10 years old to people that were in their 80s. Um, my even my mother joined, who's 80 years old, my father-in-law, who's 92, my mother-in-law, who's 87. And but throughout that time, all you saw was different people from different nationalities, different ages. So, and there was this feeling of hope, and it was literally electric. It was like in the air. Whenever you were either passing an actual group of people that were protesting on No King's Day, or you were actually in the midst of it. It was like a collective coming together. So that feeling of being lost or scared or isolated was replaced with empowerment and hope.
Yeah, I felt that too. I felt that too. Especially, and I'm going to show you some pictures in a bit, guys. But especially, we were on an overpass, 40 feet up in the air in one of the protests, and it's a very busy overpass here in northern New Jersey, and there were cars beeping and just the energy that was coming from
Yeah.
that. But in the previous protest, and maybe this is just me, and Patricia, I want to ask you this question because Ritu is, I would say she's waist deep in the politics, but not like me. She's not. She knows what's going on, but she's not. Her thing is wellness, and in the hospital, it's really overwhelming. Where she works, it's hard to dip out of that. But Patricia also joins us frequently in our regular lives, so I know she's maybe not obsessed with the news like I am, but she's in the politics as well, in the sense that 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 we're always talking about it together on our lives. So I want to the comment that I want to make was that I noticed that there was a difference. Um, the first protest, which was, well, I don't remember if it was 6 months ago or how many, but there was a sense of like palpable fear
Mhm.
that was there was hope and there was a jubilant attitude, right? But Renee Good had not been murdered yet, and Alex Preddy hadn't been killed yet, um and ICE had done horrible things, but not to, and we weren't at war. But yet there was a sense back then, I felt that there was it was like a desperate effort to be heard, right? There was a good feeling and a jubilant feeling, but it didn't feel like there was a lot of hope. And like Ritu was saying, it felt like hopeful. It felt like we're going to be
Mhm.
okay, like democracy is going to be okay. And and again, from your perspective as a mental health professional, um, and being aware of what's going on in the news, and I don't know if you're getting any of this with your clients to the extent that you can comment on it, but do you sense a difference in the communal mental health of the country or of your clients or of me? Since, maybe it's just me, but is it does it feel like the country is getting healthier in terms of how we react to our politics emotionally, or is there nothing, or am I just kind of pontificating and it's not really a thing?
I think it's pretty natural for people um, to look for answers or to try to understand. And because this is a new playbook that we don't know what to expect, so we're constantly having to change and shift and to try to regulate in different ways. And so as far as the health of our mental health system, I think kind of just pointing to that, like we're always trying to find an answer or trying to find different things. We have to always be changing and we always have to be asking questions. And so, yeah, sometimes I have a few people in mind in my practice that come in and some days or some weeks they're just like, this was really good this week. I'm feeling hopeful. And then other times they come in and they're like, well, we just went to war. So it is just kind of taking that moment and kind of what we've talked about before is just, naming those feelings, kind of understanding where you're at and making sure that what are you doing to take care of yourself so that you can keep going. Um, because
Yeah,
that's,
no, that
yeah.
definitely makes sense. And let me show you guys. Let me just take a moment now, because I don't think we can necessarily what I had hoped to do for today was capture some of that experience in videos. I wanted to do sort of Don Lemon like interviews of folks on the street, and I just the kind of the way we went out, like, Ritu and I had a schedule, but it never worked out, and we wound up like I left all my equipment at home, and then we wound up hitting a protest that we didn't think we were going to hit, and we never got to the protest that we were going to get, because we didn't go to the big protests, which it was in New York City in our area. We went to a couple of the smaller ones. So I didn't get those interviews because I wanted to capture, and that's what we wanted to sort of break up our conversation a little bit with, was sort of capturing those videos. And I know you guys have probably seen a million videos on clips and pictures on social media, and this isn't going to be very different. But I think it adds a little color to what we're talking to here. So this is my parents. This is who Ritu was talking about. My dad is 91. My mom is 88. They've never been to a protest in their lives. They're either the very beginning of the baby boomers or the very last ones left from the silent generation, the World War II generation. So that wasn't, they're not children of the 60s, right? They weren't protesting. But for them, democracy, the fear of losing democracy, even though they're at the twilight of their lives, is so unacceptable. And they have and they have, because they have never seen anything like the moment we are in. They've never seen anything like this, right? They had to come out, and they just had to be, they didn't have signs, they didn't stand at the street level, but they needed to be seen and they needed to be heard, and they woke up, they were alive. And I mean, they're pretty lively anyway for their age, but they were inspired, they were infused by the protest. Hang on, let me just pop over to here. Then this is a person I don't know. This is just I don't know who this person is, but they were very nice. It was a very nice person, and I can't. Very nice person, fantastic person. They were fabulous. We love them. That's me. Now the disturbing juxtaposition here is it looks like I'm in jail. Like, it looks like I'm behind a cage, which kind of defeats the purpose of the sign that I was holding. But that's because we were up on this overpass, and the sun was really strong, so we couldn't get good shots because of the way the sun and the camera. No matter which way you stood, the sun was in a bad position for a shot, and there were shadows everywhere. But again, there was a sense of a joy. And here is my wife and me and my mother-in-law, and again, my mother-in-law is My mother-in-law is an immigrant from India. My in-laws came here when they were in their 70s. They didn't protest, right? They were just trying to, they came here at a time when they were just almost desperate to be accepted. Racism was rampant. It was very difficult to be an Indian American when they came here. There was no such term. There was no such thing. And they were more interested in assimilation than protesting.
Mhm.
But if you ask my in-laws today, and they still love their home country, they love India, but they will tell you in a heartbeat that America is the greatest country on the in the
Mhm.
to live in, even after what we've been through. And even though my mother-in-law sort of joked about coming here and she was sort of antagonizing my son, saying she's going to yell "Go Trump," just to get him to have to argue with her, you could tell that she was inspired to be here, and she was inspired to speak up for her freedom, for her rights. There's us again. There's our son, but we don't, we hide his face because, we don't necessarily want to want to advertise him on social. There you can kind of see his eyes, and I think that's about it. And there's my mother-in-law for the. For the main picture. So you can, and that energy, I feel like that energy. I feel like that energy was something that we are seeing everywhere.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you, Pandela. It was awesome for my parents to be there, Pandela. So when Ritu and I were talking about this yesterday, we had a disagreement, and thankfully we have Patricia, who's our friend and who is a marriage and family therapist. Not that that was her job yesterday, but when Ritu was talking about how positive everything that we've been talking about up to this point. And I feel like you guys might be feeling what I'm feeling, what I felt yesterday. We were talking about how positive all this was, how good this felt. And then I kind of shifted and I had said to my wife, you know what, like, yeah, but Alex Pretty is still dead. Renee Good is still dead. We are still at war in Iran, and at any given moment, a ground assault
Mhm.
might begin in Iran with U.S. troops, which is going to mean thousands and thousands of casualties, thousands of dead soldiers on all sides. And at the same time, we know Donald Trump is lying to all of us about negotiating with the Iranians. I don't feel that good, and I don't want to. And what are we going to do about that? And then, love, can you? And we actually almost got into a little bit of an argument about this, and we thought it might be worth it because I think a lot of people are feeling this way, to bring that. Ritu and I will behave better than we did yesterday, but to bring that into this discussion. And, because I think a lot of you guys might be experiencing that too. So what do you say about that, love?
I mean, so the disagreement, and this is a disagreement that Mitch and I have often, and that is, I'm always saying, how can we take away what's going on with this particular administration where they're constantly using fear, divisiveness, we're right, you're wrong, that tactic over and over and over again. And that fear, that divisiveness, that you're right, we're wrong, and that basically is making people separate further and further away from one another. And these issues is not only hurting just Republicans and Democrats, it's going bigger. Like, people are losing friendships, they're losing relationships, close relationships. Families are being divided because they have such strong feelings on both respect, right? Um, and what I was saying to Mitch is, where can we find the common ground? Where could we find the humanity with one another versus sticking to I'm right, you're wrong, and or the sticking to our point of view and not understanding someone else's. And I think that's where this got really heated. And Mitch was like, I think our boys came up an octave, right, love? A
Yeah.
couple of times. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I have a tendency of trying to not necessarily find the positive in things, but try to find the humanity. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's a popular thing to do. And I think what happened was Mitch was started bringing up, well, how do I find the humanity in ICE who's going around killing Renee Good or Alex Prithy, right? That was your stance.
Well, it was, and it was, but it was also, how do I find the humanity? How do I find common ground with not just the ICE agent, not just the president, not just the goofballs that are around him? Obviously, I'm already insulting them. So, but how do I find common ground with someone who supports that, right? Someone who didn't do it, right?
Yeah.
And how do I like, so if I meet someone, right, and they might be perfectly nice, but they support the Trump administration, right? Let's say yesterday we were at the early protest I was at. There were the people that were protesting, and then there were a couple counter protesters across the street, right? So I can buy into finding common ground with those protesters across the street in that maybe we both like blueberry pie, right? And maybe we can come together over a blueberry pie and ice cream, right? But can I respect them? Because I know that if they are actively supporting an administration that is engaged in, say, the murder of 2 American citizens, then they're actively engaged in, they're enabling the murder of 2 American citizens. Why do I, and I'll because you're you're the rational, not that Ritu and I are irrational, but we are married. But Patricia, you're you're the maybe the clear-minded one, like in this conversation. Like, why? I know I'm going to get in trouble because I just said after we hang up, because Ritu's gonna be like, you said I wasn't clear-minded to everyone,
Yeah.
but that's not what I mean. But why stretch myself that far, Patricia? Like, what is I can say, all right, Patricia, I'm going to go, and yeah, you know what? If I need to sit down with somebody who is a MAGA community member, and we both love pie and ice cream, and we're going to just do that, I'll go that far. But how do I I still know that they're fine with the fact that Renee Good and Alex Pritty were killed. And so why should I find common ground with them beyond a piece of cake or a pie? And I think that's a question a lot of people would ask. Like,
It's hard to justify it. Like how can we show empathy and kindness to these people when they wouldn't to us?
yeah, and why though? Like, why? And I guess the argument would be like, you guys, I feel like as therapists, you would tell us to do that, wouldn't you? Or would you tell us? I mean, no, Ritu, you would, right? You would tell me to
I
find.
would.
Patricia, would you agree? That we should find, or is it okay to not want to have anything to do with them?
It's really hard. It's really hard because you don't agree with their values and their morals or where their beliefs are, because for us we know that it's wrong and we know that it's hurting people and it's killed people. So it's almost like
Oh, hang on, one guy.
I
Keep
almost
talking, guys. I just have to tell them to just keep going. I just got to step away for a second.
I mean, so like Ritu kind of helped me with this and that. Is Mitch kind of asking, should we forgive them? Is that kind of a
I
point he's
think
making?
I think he's asking, how do we move through this?
That's so, guys.
Like, yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. We just have some company. I just had to ask them to stop talking because we can hear them on the camera.
I also think of I've been seeing a lot of people who were like, I was a Republican, I did vote for Trump, and now I'm seeing the light. I'm seeing this is wrong,
Hmm.
and being like, no, I can't support this anymore. Like that woman, that was on the news, the TV guy interviewed her, and she was like, I voted for him 3 times, and I'm the idiot, you know? Um, so it's almost like people are beginning to wake up and they're beginning to see, is it ever going to be everybody? No, but we're seeing more people, seeing them come to the other side, seeing them um, know that this is wrong, what they're doing is wrong, and they're hurting people.
Cool.
But it's
And
not
so,
going to hit everybody.
yeah, and I kind of see it that way too. Now, Lover, you would argue the other point, right? You would argue
I
that
would,
we stretch further.
yeah,
So
I
let's have it.
do.
Let's hear it.
And I know this is very unpopular and I might be kumbaya, but I believe that as we continue to judge others, and even though the judgment seems valid, right? It's how do you not when a woman and a man have been, I'm sorry, my son is near me, but KILLED in cold, BLOOD. It's natural to think, well, and justified, right? To think I have every reason to hate them. I have every reason to be angry and disappointed and frustrated, and I will go toe to toe against them, right? It sounds so justifiable and believable, and we can stand in our ground and we can say, this is what I want to do. But let me ask you, and this is a question, and you people are not going to like me after this, but how does that make you feel? What are you left with those emotions? You're left with anger and frustration and hurt and disappointment and fear. And those emotions that you're experiencing, yes, I would want to say, yes, it's justifiable. Yes, they're important. Yes, you need to look at them. But you're sitting with those emotions. And those emotions are, let me finish, love. But those emotions are my husband loves to talk over me, as you can see.
Oh
But
my
those
God.
but those emotions are making you feel miserable inside. So if I could get real about that, we have a tendency as a society. And look, guys, I've been there. I want to sit there and kind of stay in my stuff, and I could rattle off stuff that's made me feel miserable and sad and depressed, and those feelings, what they do is they make me feel victimized. They're only hurting me. And that story that I play over and over and over again, the people, the ICE agents, the Trumps, the administration, do you think they give a shit how you feel? They don't. But what's happening is you're leaving feeling horrible inside. It's hurting your emotional health, your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual health.
And I think to bolster your point a little bit. I mean, I'm not completely there with you, but to bolster your point a little bit, Ritu she has had the experience. I could never handle it, but she has had the experience over and over and over again. She's worked in the hospital for 30 years. She's been in every department, pretty much every department. Maybe there's a few that she hasn't been in. She has been in everywhere from the most intense places, the emergency room in a major metropolitan hospital every night, psych wards, and every other intensive care. She's been with people who have been at the absolute worst moments in possibly the worst moments of their lives and the best moments of their lives. Like, she's been with people who are dying when they die. She's been with people who are, who are in the emergency room and the police are there and the person is handcuffed. Like, this is nothing for her. If God forbid I walk into the emergency room, if I had to go because I had a little eye thing about a week ago, God forbid there would have been a cop in there with somebody, I would have walked in and I would have seen somebody handcuffed to a gurney. I would have passed out and thrown up. I don't know if it would have been in that order, right? I would have been. They would have had to, shock me back awake. That's nothing for her to see, right? That's like, that's like Tuesday. So, having seen those experiences at their most intense, I can also understand how you can take a moment like, all right, well, trying to find your best self when you're facing up against a MAGA person who is basically, indoctrinated into the cult. Really, is it that hard? Because look, I've sat there 100 times and held somebody's hand when they were dying. Like, this is easy, for me to do. And you're right, because I do think Ritu's point and the wellness part of her is also making the point that when I come on to my lives and I complain about Trump and I call him names, or we're covering a cabinet meeting and I make fun of him and everything, he doesn't hear any of it. He doesn't know Mitch. He doesn't feel any. He doesn't. I get all twisted and my cortisol levels go up and my blood pressure goes up and I'm like really mad at him, and he knows he could give a shit, right? Like, it has no effect on him whatsoever. And I get that. I'm hurting myself first. So I can kind of buy that part. What I struggle with is when there may be an expectation that you have been in these extraordinary moments that you also consider a gift, right? That have prepared you for this moment. But I would argue that most of us are ill prepared for this moment. We have never, none of us have ever had our democracy on the line. Those of us that didn't live through the civil rights era, we're not used to seeing, American citizens killed in cold blood. So I guess my question to both of you guys is, can we really be expected to do that, right? I mean, can we really be expected to be where you're suggesting we're at? Or is it something to try to achieve? Like, in other words, like I'm not going to get there, I don't think. You know what I mean? But isn't that okay if I'm trying to be less hateful toward a MAGA person? Isn't that enough?
I always, say you are in a position where you can have that blueberry pie with them and ice cream and have a discussion, and they're going to, the mindset of people who are MAGA are just like attack. I want to beat you down with my words and make a point, right? And if you can kind of show the opposite of that and almost like show the common sense but kindly, what message are you giving to them, right? You're not letting them win, because that's the point. They always want to win. That's the whole Trump motto is we're take down the libs and all that. So I don't know. It's almost like, what can we do through our own actions to let them know we don't accept what you believe in or your beliefs, but we're also not going to treat you like you treat us. Like, what message can we be giving to them?
So how do you do with it? Like, in other words, like,
right? It's not like
how do you do?
a
Like,
situation we do daily.
Yeah, and specifically, like, how to, let's say somebody in the chat is like open to it. They're like, all right, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna throw down with them, and win, right? Like, I'm gonna let go of that, and I'm also not gonna, treat them like they treat us. I'm gonna, as a Melania would say, be better, right? I'm gonna be better, whatever. Then what do you do? Like, how do you how do you do that without surrendering your values or morals, or at least being able to feel like you're not, it's not like you're winning, but you're not like saying it's okay with me that you support
Mhm.
bigotry and racism and hatred, and that you're trying to like, or do you just say that?
I mean, I think yesterday was a beautiful example of showing solidarity and showing that we all stand together. And it was done with a sense of peace, a sense of love, a sense of compassion for, the people that have died, a sense of compassion and love for the immigrants. So yesterday was a beautiful example of everyone coming together. Now, when I say, recognize how those emotions, if there's a MAGA in front of you and they're flipping out, and um, I don't mean stand down and not, it's important for us to assert our feelings and our values and our morals. But if we're constantly looking at divisiveness, if that is our narrative and we're constantly focused on that, that's what I'm saying. That's where it's hurting us. But where can we find ways to take action? But action in a way that is empowering, that delivers hope. So I think that's imperative. And yesterday and 6 months ago, when we did the No Kings protest, was just a powerful way to do it, and writing to your senators and doing whatever. But it starts with taking care of our own internal compass and not allowing what's happening outside of us to dictate what's happening internally. Because I think a lot of times we take whatever is going on externally and we give our power away by then saying, well, this is how this made me feel, right? And it seems very justifiable. So if, like, say, Mitch and I are getting into a fight, this is like a very basic example, but it's very relatable. And him and I being so close, it's easy to say, well, because you did this, you know, I feel really upset and really unhappy. It's like, no, Mitch did whatever he did, but I chose to take that information and I chose to be unhappy or upset.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds, again, really out there, but it truly isn't, because again, that change your words of, um uh, like, I was really upset when you did this or whatever. But if you say I chose, or you made me unhappy, that's it. Most people are like, oh, you made me unhappy. You have now surrendered and given your power to that person. But if you simply change it by saying I chose to feel this way, you take your power back. So, and then you recognize that it is a decision that you're making.
Yeah. And that makes that really resonates with me, because look, I do not infrequently refer to the fact that Donald Trump afforded all of us, if we chose to take it on, the privilege of being victims, right? Donald Trump was able to say, nothing is my fault. It's all their fault. It's the brown people's fault. There was an invasion. They sent the murderers. It's not your fault that your job sucks, or that your life sucks, or that your marriage sucks, or that your, work sucks. It's them, and
Mhm.
you're not responsible anymore. And I felt that that was one of the most attractive things that Trump provided to all of our worst selves. And there were some
Mhm.
people who were, who might have had those feelings but repressed them, because they were trying to be some version of better, but they had them and they weren't working through them, right? They weren't sort of working through them. They might have felt like nothing was their fault, but they didn't want to admit it. And there were people who really felt that way, and he empowered them. And then there were people who were trying so hard in life, but nothing was working out for them. And again, instead of taking personal responsibility, just surrender and blame it on everyone else, right? And I think that's a big attraction to his populism. But I sort of what you're saying, I think, love, is that without realizing it, a lot of us are doing that, but we're releasing our power because we're saying, look,
Yeah.
those counter protesters across the street are making me angry. They're
Mm-hmm.
making me feel mad. What's the nerve of those people? When in reality, I think you're saying is I have the power whether or not to be
Yes.
mad. Like they are doing what they're doing, but I make the decision to be mad,
Mm-hmm.
and it's my choice. And I'm not a victim. Like, they can't tell me how I should feel. And it's a bold step, though. I mean, it's hard to do it, but to test it out, which I might try to
Mm-hmm.
do, and say, all right, I'm not going to you can act the way you're acting, but I'm not going to give up my power to you. I'm not going to get
Or
mad.
or if you do, simply recognizing that you have just done that. Just recognizing that you have given your power away and that you have a choice. And or just recognizing, all right, this is happening externally from me, but internally I am feeling mad. And that allows you to change the narrative, and that allows you to stop victimizing yourself and recognizing that you have chosen at that moment to be angry, to be mad. And then you can ask yourself, for how long? Am I going to choose to be angry or mad for 1 minute, for 5 minutes, for an hour? And after that time frame is done, as you can choose to be angry, then you could choose another emotion.
All right, let's take that a little further then, just a little further as we come toward the end of this live today. But we're at war right now, right?
Mhm.
Most of us on this call would agree that we're at a war that we shouldn't be in.
Mhm.
The
Agree.
administration has not given us any sort of sensible reason for this war. Um, and they keep telling us they have given us clear, objective, and sensible reasons, but that doesn't match reality, right? There have been changing. Pete Hegseth and the village idiot Donald Trump have been shifting the reasons for the war consistently. We've already lost two handfuls of soldiers, and
Yeah.
all told, there are probably, at least from numbers that are being reported, probably at least 6,000 to 8,000 people that across the board from Israel, U.S., Iran, Iraq, and other Middle Eastern countries that are dead for nothing, for what feels like, in essence, two guys, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, who you wouldn't hire to walk your dog because you wouldn't trust they would come back in one piece, the dog, right? And now we're looking at the potentiality of two things. We have nearly 10,000 soldiers en route right now. They may be there. And we're
Mhm.
looking at the potentiality of a ground invasion into the Iranian island of Karg, if that's where they attack, right? The Iranians have made it clear. They've called the village idiots bluff. They have made it clear that they're willing to die. They're willing to fight to the end. They're not, and we will, if God forbid this ground invasion happens, we're going to lose a lot of people. There's nothing we can do about it other than
Mhm.
what we did yesterday, right? We've also heard Carolyn Levitt talk about the fact that no, we're not going to rule out the idea of a draft, right? So, when we have this discussion about taking your power back and
Mhm.
not making the choice not to feel angry. I don't know if this is a fair question for you guys, and let me. I think I'll direct this one to Patricia, just because you and I have so much emotion attached to our own interpersonal discussion about this. But like, I want to be angry about this situation because it feels so wrong to me, but I can't do anything about it. Is that, if I choose to be angry, is that a useful emotion at this moment? Because I can't do anything whether I'm angry or not, right? I can't change it. I mean, I can do what I can do, right? Which is this. But is that choice an appropriate choice at that moment, or is there never an appropriate choice or inappropriate choice? Like, does that make sense? The question I'm trying. I don't know.
Like, is it appropriate to be angry? Absolutely. What they're doing is horrific, and what they're asking of us is horrific and so damaging. So, like Ritu and I've said before, acknowledge that anger. I'm angry. Yeah, I feel that anger. But I also heard somebody else say this week, use that anger to fuel action.
Amen.
Mitch, doing what you're doing, put that anger into talking to the people and learning and helping us understand the news better. What Ritu and I are doing, if we can channel that anger into helping people, sure. Going to the protest yesterday, people let their voices be known. I don't know what tantrum Trump is going to do because of it, but we're letting these people know, this administration know we're angry and this is not what we voted for. Not that I voted for him, but
Sure.
yeah. So the anger is appropriate, but use it to do something about it. Don't just sit in it and don't use it negatively.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. And I think that's what a lot of, because look, I mean, not everybody has these outlets, right? I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm able to do this work, right? And it gives me the opportunity to release to take action. At least I feel like I am, right? And I can channel that anger. But let's say, some folks out there are, you're working a job or two jobs and you have your family and, you don't have you don't have the time to dial in and move that anger in an toward appropriate action, right? There's just, when you finally hit the pillow at 10 o'clock, you're so tired from living that day. And, but then you're up until 1 because that anger is reeling in there, that fear that you've got to, your son just turned 18 and, Pete Hegseth might draft him, God forbid, for a war if this war is spiraling out of control in 4 months. So what do they do with that anger? Like when there's nowhere, when you're not in a position to channel it positively because, you're just trying to get by.
So I think with the anger, behind the anger is fear, right? And a sense of feeling really out of control and helpless and hopeless. And I love, Patricia, what you had said about taking that anger and finding the drive and the motivation. And it doesn't have to be to going to No King's Day because that was yesterday, right? So we're not going to have another protest for like another 6 months. But what can you do? Right, use the resources that you're capable of tapping into and that you excel in. So Mitch is a writer as well as a beautiful public speaker, emailing your senator, your congressman, going to town halls, getting out there in whichever way you can. And again, so that's that action step. And asking yourself, all right, that anger, it's almost like I'm horrible
Well,
with my idioms.
can I just interrupt for a second? Because I want to just dial in a little bit with what you're saying. I might be wrong because I think I live in a bubble, but I don't think most people have the time for that, right? I don't think it's enough, right? I don't know if there's an answer to this question. I don't know if it's a fair question to ask you guys. Like I don't know that people, because things are, life is getting more expensive. Gas just went up, $1, right? And that's $10 or $20 more dollars every time you fill your tank, right? And people are stretched and they're scared and they don't feel like they have any under control. And again, most of them are not living. We saw from the elections, it's the last election in 2024. It's not that people everybody just chose Trump. Like I thought that, they just voted him because they were racist, right? It's that a lot of people were so terrified about the financial situation and they thought that Biden couldn't fix it and therefore Kamala couldn't or wouldn't fix it, right? Because the price of groceries was too high. So, and I feel like so many people, they don't have that extra. Yeah, they might call their senator, they might write a letter, but they squeeze that in their lunch break, right? So I'm saying they go to bed at 10 o'clock and now they're up for an extra anger. There's no action left for them to take because they have nothing left. I feel like a lot of the country is at this point where they've got nothing left to do. And then they're stuck with that rage. And again, I don't know if it's a fair question because I don't know if there's a solution for that. Like, how do they channel that anger into positive energy if they're just trying to live and that takes everything they got?
I think in sometimes baby steps and small steps, and it comes down to taking your power back. And again, recognizing that you're choosing to be angry. It sounds like it's not a big deal, but if you recognize it's a choice, then you have the choice to make another decision. And then it comes back to self care, self care, self care. Um, Self care sounds so elusive. And in some ways, people perceive it as being very selfish, especially when we're witnessing it in a political culture where there's a lot of self-interest. So people shy away from self-care. But in those moments, if you can take care of yourself, like I'm always reminding Mitch, and, he's been meditating. I don't know how much, if he shares that with his community, but he's been meditating for over 30, 40 years, right, Love? So I'm always reminding him when he gets angry or frustrated, all right, have you meditated today? Have you filled your cup? And his choice is meditation. Someone else's choice is breath work. Someone else's choice is going to the gym. Someone else is going to get a facial or going to the spa. Doesn't matter, but what are you doing to help fill your cup is another way to kind of get through the frustration and the anger, because the more filled you are, the less reactive you become. And then you can take a more proactive stance. And also, here's a quick tip that I love to give to my clients is, when at night you're ruminating, and we can talk about sleep hygiene at our next if people want it, but like literally keep a pen and paper at your bedside, because as you're ruminating, your brain is then trying to close that loop. It's called the Zeigarnik effect, and it was made from it was a psychologist. I think she was in the 1920s. She noticed that when she was at a cafe, the waiters would have everything. They were able to keep their order in mind, but the minute that the tab was closed, they would forget the order. And it turned into where she realized that the brain likes open loops. And it's always attempting to close the loop. And a lot of shows and commercials are built upon this. So, do you know how when we're binge watching a show on Netflix, each end of the show, there is I don't know what it's called, but they kind of leave you hanging, and then you want to watch the next episode, then the next episode, because they know the psychology behind the brain. So if you keep pen and paper by your bedside and you start writing down your concerns, your fears, your to-do list, it closes the loop on every part of that brain and allows you to rest more. So it's almost like you could even journal right before you go to bed, but it closes the loop, settles the mind so you can go to sleep, and getting a good night's sleep, you feel better the next day.
Yeah, and excuse the pun, but the bad dad pun, but don't sleep on that suggestion, because that simplicity of, and I think you got exactly where I was going there too. I usually have a hard time communicating getting what's in here out here, but that's why Ritu can usually translate that into things people can understand as I'm babbling. But that little thing is what you can do, right? And writing on a piece of paper, just when you're there and you have that anger and you have that rage and you have that hopelessness, and it feels like you can't go to sleep after that long day of just getting through the day, and you think it's useless to take a few deep breaths or to meditate, because what's that going to do for you? That's not going to solve your problems. That's not going to keep our kids from going to war. That thought that it's useless is in essence where you shoot yourself in the foot, because then you don't take that little step. Makes it really opens up a door of healing. And like Ritu's saying, if you just write something down, there's something that happens physiologically. Like you change in that moment, and you're going to feel better. And then if you do that for 30 nights, and it takes you a maximum of 1 minute, and you do that for 30 nights, that's 30 minutes of really concentrated work after a month that will matter. And I think that's the key, or a key. And I would ask Patricia, do you when you have somebody who's in therapy, right? They can't, a lot of times, no matter what they're dealing with, right? They can't always get from where they're at to where they want to go without taking these like little steps, right? Because you sometimes can never see the problem, the solution. Sometimes you can't even see the problem for a while. Is that correct?
Or they've their problem is not, they're not understanding actually what the real problem is. Like they'll come in with a problem and I will sit there and kind of break it apart with them, and then they're just like, wait a minute, this is really the problem. It's like what's underneath the problem is
Yeah.
where we go in the therapy. And kind of going back to what Ritu was saying with the sleep, and like we want to help people learn to cope. I think that's kind of what you're asking also, Mitch, is how do we help people cope to get to the next step of doing, or with these big feelings, how do we cope with them to take care of ourselves, to go to the next thing? So maybe once they start putting their thoughts before they go to sleep somewhere, they're going to get better sleep. Then they might have more energy in the morning to do something else, and kind of like creating space in these little steps that we talk about to eventually get to a point where maybe they can do more, whatever that looks like in their schedule. And it's not a guarantee, but it's just like, how do you take care of yourself so that you can do things?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too, because your perception changes too, right? And when your perception changes, what you can actually do changes. Like there are days that I'll think that I have 10,000 things to do. I have lives, and I have a couple interviews, and you have to pick up my son, and I got to make dinner, and I've got all my trainings with chorus, and how can and that's so overwhelming. But then there are times that I meditate and I get my head in a better place, and that exact same day is like a breeze. It's like it is not nearly as overwhelming as the perception was. Like Ritu always reminds me when I'm stressing about something or I'm judging something or there's something bothering me. She'll often say to me, "Well, the first thing to ask yourself is what you're feeling really true? Like, is it really true, right?" Let me give you an example. Like, is it really like I talked about all the stuff with the ground invasion, right? The potential ground invasion. And is it really true that there is going to be a ground invasion? And that's not factually true at this point. We are not, and it's just as likely. And also understanding there, there's analysis and there's facts, right? And the analysis, understanding Trump's delusion and the way he operates to the limited extent that I do, it could go either way, right? This war could end tomorrow. He could decide tomorrow that he's done, he's bored with it, he wants to go on to Cuba. We had a great victory. We're pulling out all the troops. Everybody's coming home. We destroyed them. They're gone. It's over. And literally, that could happen tomorrow. And it ends. And it ends. And the Israelis pull out because they need us. And thank God the killing stops. That is just as likely as a ground invasion. So Ritu might say, if I'm up at 2 a.m. stressing about this, is what you're stressing about true? And if you question factually if it's a real thing or not, a lot of times you'll find out that what's bothering you, sometimes we invent it to make it worse, to victimize ourselves. Because that sometimes feels good, because sometimes it feels better, like the MAGAs, like Trump, to blame, to blame your problem on someone else, right? And that might be a play, if I'm sitting down and I'm eating the blueberry pie with a person from the MAGA community, that might be the common ground. Maybe you guys took me full circle now, because maybe I could say, well, sometimes I'll get so mad at Trump and I'll take the worst thing that he's going to do and make that the real thing in my mind, because I really do want to be pissed at him right now, because my identity is tied to that. And my follower count is as well, right? The madder I am, the more people will come. So I might be able to have that conversation with them where they're like, I get why. I don't understand why it's okay with you that, brown people are getting killed and white citizens, who are standing up for them are getting killed. But I do understand the victimization, because I do that myself too. So that might be a good, I don't know. If Mitch has seen the light, maybe that's a good spot to end it. Right? Because if I can evolve, maybe anybody can. So anyway, guys, we're just at an hour. So Ritu's also been pushing me to keep my lives shorter and more, on target. So succinct. So, I think this is a good spot to wrap it. So thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Ritu, for sharing your expertise. If you need more of this, Ritu is at, what are you at, Ritu Chib Ivan or Ritu Chib?
Ritu Chib Ivan.
Just follow her everywhere, Instagram, TikTok, Ritu Chib Ivan, RITUCHIBEIVEN. She does daily everythings. Patricia is not all over social yet as an influencer, but are you?
I do a lot of reposting. No, I just repost everything.
Yes. So Patricia is, yes. So she reposts, but she's not actively influencing yet. But if she does start, we will definitely promote it, because there's a lot of people who she can help. So, and guys, also, if you're on any of the other socials and you want some of the more in-depth stuff, make sure you follow me on Substack. It's Substack. It's Zenocracy, ZENOCRACY.news. That's where whenever I do live interviews, that's where they go first before they go to YouTube a couple days later. That's where we don't have enough written content, but there will be more written content. That's the community that we're building out. Although all socials are outstanding and I love them all. And if you're happy where you are, be where you're at. So I think that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody who joined us on all of the socials. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live at a time. We're just going to keep chunking through it, guys. We're almost a year and a half in. So we're going to get there. Take care, everybody. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.